So I got the beverage in hand, and I had some of this yesterday. This is a green tea, Magnolia green tea, for those who are wondering. And on the bottom, it's got some sediment. I could tell. On the bag, it says that if you're gonna cold steep it, to do it for 5 hours in about 8 to 10 ounces of water. Now I did about 10 ounces of water steeped for almost 10 hours plus. Now yesterday, without having confirmation bias or any kind of personal flexibility with the results and just enjoying the journey of what is Magnolia tea. Wow. This is probably my second time ever making tea, and it is a preferred tea to have because the effects I was feeling yesterday was, and you could see this in the video I made yesterday, episode 2, which was about detachment from money, is that I was in like a complete like sedative state. And if I were to try to get this to apply to a wide range of people so that they can understand what I was feeling, felt like you were in the couch, a gardener that was in the couch. And having had been a practitioner of gardening, I realized that this stuff is really good. And I also don't have to drive out of my, well, I did have to drive to Melrose in Los Angeles to meet the gentleman who was able to sell me this tea. But now that I have it at home, I now have the ability to drink this tea whenever I choose. And the sleep I had last night was great. I'll tell you that much. And right now I find myself I'm on my way to tanning. I realized, you know what, I could push play and act on inspiration. And so here we are. Episode 3. I'm drinking my tea and we're going on what drives creativity. Well, what drives creativity is, I could tell you that the stars drive creativity. I could tell you that the moon drives creativity. But the one thing that happens to redundantly and constantly be true in all these equations and all these realizations is that I or you is the individual making the realizations. So you're like this crosshair that exists between what people refer to as space, what people refer to as time, and it kind of accumulates in this thing called matter, a physical 3D thing that you and I both are. And so, that being said, it's still for me to say it again that the individual, the I, the you, that's what drives creativity. And when I realized that it was something that I had within both my grasp and somewhat my control, all I can say is that a door opened and I haven't walked back the other way. Oftentimes, the checkpoint for me is that I'll get a book and I won't read it. And the reason I don't read the book is because I happen to get a DLC. Just, I don't know, like it's received. I receive a DLC into my brain. I upgrade my processing and internal computer works, and then I instantly become aware of a completely different set of equations and more books and I buy the books, and similarly, I don't read the books. It's just buying the book becomes this thing about, oh, you know what, you could read the book, but you could also go and learn about yourself. And the more you learn about yourself, the more you'll understand A, why you bought the book, but then B, you'll have a completely different perspective based off of new sets of information as to what the point of the book is. And that kind of drives my creativity in the sense that in this artistic journey that is creation of me developing my own life, it's been a fascinating thing to come to terms with. Oh, you know what? If I'm doing my best to be on my totem and develop rhythm, routine, momentum in a particular direction, then all these doors are going to open for me. Because what I also learned was that in a particular opposite rhythm, opposite routine, other doors opened. Now, having had walked through both worlds, there was one that I would rather walk through. And the vices were always there, and so were the people who were doing their best to make me realize within myself, A, why the vices kept repeatedly showing up in my life, but then B, what to do in those situations so that I could both put them down and forget about them at the same time. And so this guy, Brian Withers, and this is a fascinating thing that I'm sure that many of you, once you hear this, you'll be like, oh. When it comes to my own drive as a person, or how much growth I have personally, it's fascinating because there's like these mental checkpoints where it'll be like, oh, you know what, August, you chose to continue to strive, and you continued to appreciate yourself. And in that same resonant theme, we're going to hand you Brian Withers. And Brian Withers is giving you a ladder, and you could either climb the ladder, you could go up a step and see how it feels, or you could walk right past the ladder. And so what I did was, I was like, okay, this Brian Withers guy, what is he talking about? Then I realized, like, oh wait, I'm not saying that everything is a sign, but what I am saying is what you make of the sign and what you choose to create from the thoughts that you receive, what you know about what you know about. That's the creativity. And so I realized, it was like, okay, this guy is saying something, and he essentially is building new thoughts for people so that they can then look at the model and be like, oh, he's not building the Lego for me. He's handing me the instructions, and I have the building blocks. I have the Legos. And once I do it once, then I'll be able to say, okay, I know what it feels like to have the instructions. I'm going to go and provide myself with the instructions because I already have the Legos. And then I'm also going to be the one to follow the instructions and put the Legos into their proper place so that when I finish bag one, I'll have the left wheel. When I finish bag two, I'll have the right wheels. When I finish bag three, I'll have the body. And then by the time I get to the fourth step of it all, I'll have the entire Lego figured out. Done. And so that's what I learned. It was like this whole creative process thing is more so the act of rebuilding, renegotiating, and I'm feeling this. It's the most. This is one of the most fascinating things I've ever drank in my life. It tastes like a beautiful rose petal with the ever so slight aftertaste of like an almond maybe or a walnut. Got a bit of a nutty kind of let off there. In the beginning is a it smells like rose water. Anyways, where I was going with the whole Brian Withers analogy was because you're the driver of the car that you built, you essentially have three avenues to go. You could go nowhere. You could keep making the same U-turn and keep making the same U-turn and keep seeing the same medians and all that. Or you could just be on a runaway train and essentially accept. A lot of people are going to call it the unknown. Some people might even call it fate. But it's the path. And me finding out about this at 24 is like, how did I get here? Right? And so this is what drives my creativity is the focus I can have on acknowledging my own inner voice, realizing that there doesn't have to be constant approval, there doesn't have to be doubt or despair that I'm letting things go and that I'll never feel them or see them again. And then because ultimately when you get to the part where it's like, I know that I have these feelings of coulda, shoulda, woulda, but then realizing that this whole timing thing is both part of the journey and something you have to accept in the extent that you shouldn't sit on your totem looking behind you. And you shouldn't sit on your totem being anxious about what's coming. But instead, you should focus on that path you're on right now and all the details that come with it, because you have to process this version of what's going on. And that's the creative process. That's what drives my creativity is when I'm out in the field and I'm taking my photos, there's just like that is literally when time doesn't exist. And feeling that feeling is such a true thing, because I heard a guy named Ken say that time is literally not real. And in those moments, I 100% agree. Because then in the past, when there were other moments where I was spiraling my own thoughts, it was like, man, I just spent 15 minutes just like in this complete panic mode. But then at the same time, that contrast, and Brian talks about it a lot, where you sit there realizing, man, X, Y, and Z, not for me. But then in that same moment, you have to accept that you come to that realization is also the same realization of you saying, okay, but A, B, and C, that's what I'm meant for. Because then you instantly start moving in that direction. And it's up to you to create that momentum towards said thing. Like today, for example. I got up and I was like, man, my sleep was great. But then I instantly went to my phone, checking on this and checking on that. And what I realized is that my time farming, you're essentially going to walk past the strawberries all the time. And there's not an ounce of doubt to sit there and be like, oh, Mr. Berry, you're about an inch big today. When are you going to be ready? Or, Mr. Berry, I hope that you grow to be as big as Mrs. Berry over there. And in that same sense, it's like, I understand that I could check up on all of the social medias, but then at the same time, what I also can realize is that, yeah, the creative process essentially grants everyone the opportunity to receive all of the abundance and more. So by trusting that creative process, it's ultimately the redundancy of honoring the system, taking care of the literal creating, because we're not in charge of saying, oh, this result this or this result that. We're only in charge with resonating with that which what we desire. And the details that we get to learn about that is a creative process. It's more so the why than the what, in the sense that for example on the notion of taking photos, my oftentimes my photos come out in a particular way with a film camera that I'm sitting there going, now that feeling, I like that feeling. I'm going to keep doing this because it resonates with when I woke up. That creative feeling I had, I found it here doing this photo thing. It's not that, and like that's the thing with film is, and this adds to the being a farmer. It's not like you could take the photo, go back, and be like, oh, I gotta get the lighting this way or the perspective to be a little bit 2 inches to the left. It's this thing of like, yes, the photo's going to be taken. Yes, the pictures are going to be developed, and then yes, the result is that I get to then receive the photos. Plain and simple. That this is amazing. don't even know how I just did that, but I just did. I've been talking for about 20 minutes, and some of this will make sense to a bunch of people. And for those of you that have come this far, if I could sum up everything that I was saying, be like, what drives creativity? I would say that the unknown does. Because the more, like, I think about music in this simple sense that a lot of the music that I found, or has found me, is because I decided to look at a set and watch a set, someone DJing music that I'd never heard before. And to me, that drives my creativity in the extent that I know I could listen to the same, and I often do. I have playlists for this where I go and I push play and I get the instant dopamine, serotonin, melatonin hit that I have consistently relied on for some time now. And so when I listen to those particular songs, it gets me in a particular mood and I get a particular feeling, right? But also in the same sense, there's a completely different world where I could just right now, before I was listening to, this is Nick Hurley live at Fuse 6th from March the 6th, 2017. And I have 946 different songs in this playlist called If Pandora Never Existed. And the reason why I have all these songs in here is because I quite literally have the mental, ooh, I'd like to go listen to a whole bunch of music that I may have never heard before. Because even if I had heard the song, it's going to be mixed in between two songs that it may or may not have ever been put next to. But then B, I get to listen and hear new sounds and discover new feelings that maybe they do resonate. Maybe they resonate with, like, oh, you know what, I'd love to listen to this song when it's the sunrise. And so like that's what drives my creative process, is being sitting there and being like, this song feels like I am in the Yuma tent and I'm looking out over the stage. I have the decks in front of me. I have a whole bunch of people around me that are similar to me, because that's just the way that things work in my life. I have a shark, a disco shark, above me, spinning around. Like, just envisioning that creative process of saying, hey, this song can be played in this space and it'll feel like that. That's what drives the creative process. Is taking, this is something that I'm working on. And I asked myself this the other day. What is the difference between a memory and a dream? And maybe at some point down the line, I get to have an epiphany and sit there and be like, oh yeah, I'm starting to get to the point where everything that I had as a dream is now becoming a memory. When I get to that point, maybe I'll be drinking a Chafolio Magnolia green tea. Sitting there being like, yeah, today I remember that that version of myself. He was 24 and he had this dream, and then today I made it a memory. And speaking of my own experience, just where I am right now in my life, I'm actually doing that right now. I'm taking something that the 21-year-old version of me thought as a dream, as like an idea, and then ultimately, yeah, you know what? I totally see the 24-year-old version of myself. They turn that dream into a memory, but it happened so casually that in the moment I was just so I was so in the journey that receiving the details was so casual. It is so casual. And so I'll wrap up by saying, I drive creativity. You drive creativity. It's it's effortless, and it's what we're here to do. You were born as a creation. I was born as a creation. This lemon tree is creating citrus in front of me. I mean, what a magical place to be in. So take care. All the best.